What a great bookcase you have behind you.
I know. I want to be there.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Yeah, it's actually all VHS. I'm a very into physical media, so I like to keep it alive. You know what I mean?
I
Yeah,
love the
yeah.
masks.
It reminds me of Larry Fessenden has a very similar office in his place. It's just everything that you'd ever want in life. This is
Yeah.
amazing.
When I interviewed him, he we went back and forth, kind of showcasing all of our stuff. It was a lot of fun.
Of
But
course you did.
yeah, let's jump into the film. So this came to me highly recommended. I enjoyed every second of it. It was a wild ride. I really didn't know what I was getting into until it got started. But to me, the heart of the film is the bond between Boyd and Jacqueline. How did the two of you work together to find the right pitch, that deliciously toxic mother-son relationship, without losing the emotional truth?
Yeah, I'll chime in. It was a fine line to showcase a a relationship dynamic like this, and to have it be enjoyable for the audience, or to have it be suffocating for the audience, So um, I really wanted to lean into the melodrama of the situation and the melodrama of the characters, um, while making sure things didn't get so unlikable. So to that note, I think my influences or inspirations were always like, oddly enough, movies like The Lion in Winter with Katharine Hepburn and Peter O'Toole, and because there's just something so enjoyable and almost addictive to watching those people go at each other's throats. Um, and I love that you or get that there's love in their relationship too. So it was just sort of trying to balance everything in a way that it was fun to be in the middle of Jacqueline and Boyd's dynamic.
From I guess from my point of view, you you have two tasks, which is that for me, Jacqueline had to be what she wanted had to be absolutely real. It had to be, I mean, it just it mattered everything to her. And if you ground yourself in that truth, that's one thing. Find the sort of I don't know that find her, I guess. Um, but the other thing is to to listen, to be in the moment, and to to listen because the writing was wonderful, and if you're listening to what's being given to you, what you say comes out of what's being given to you because it's inherent in the writing. When the writing is good, you get to a place where there's nothing else you could say but that. And so you're led by I think we were led by each other, just being in the moment with each other and with Glenn, because Glenn was there not as a spectator but as a participant, so, which was wonderful. So you just find the truth of the moment for the truth of the moment for the character, for the relationship. But it's complex because that truth is built out of many things. I mean, being in that house, that particular house, contributed hugely to whom I felt Jacqueline was. It gave me a layer of of authenticity to her experience that would have been different if it had been a set. It was an actual house that had been the first or the original bits of it were built in the 1600s, right? The land was given by Queen Elizabeth to the first to a soldier she was pleased with, just ripped out of Irish hands and given to this English guy. But the house held generations of the same family, holding on to this heritage. And that made it so real for me. And I'm sure that it helped Chris as well to fight against the weight of it.
Yeah. I mean, I love the
Definitely.
parameters. Sorry, Jess. I love the parameters of actually shooting in location. I think the house offered an awful lot. We got to use all the taxidermy from the house was there for us. All the family portraits, I think we all became a little possessed by. And in the movie, there's some moments where Jacqueline really is echoing the blocking or the stance of a photograph or painting that's behind her and so on. So, um, yeah,
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that too. The Grayson estate itself feels like a character. It's haunted by the ancestry, adds to the tension. The environment, whether you want it to or not, it had to influence, that mother-son power struggle. And because of shooting in a place like that, it made it feel so much more real for the viewer. So I know that sometimes it can be difficult shooting in a situation like that, but I applaud you both and everyone involved for taking that extra step and making this film feel that much more authentic, because so many people are afraid to do that, and it added to my experience so much.
thank you. And truthfully, when we got, I had seen maybe 20 mansions or castles in Ireland, and then we settled on this one. And it was a little bit scrappier than I had been imagining in the script, but the house spoke to us, so the script got amended slightly, and we just leaned into this uh, crumbling grandeur that it had to offer, um, that completely complemented the Grayson ancestry and what Jacqueline was going through, and to try and scramble back from. And again, I just love the parameters of the choice was made. We are shooting here. Um, all of our camera choices were somewhat affected by that, blocking choices and so on. But that's beautiful to me. That is filmmaking. I didn't want to be able to move a wall and pull the camera back as far as, this wasn't CGI or animation. This was just grounded in that estate, and we just let it speak to us, from the production designer to the my director of photography, Narian van Mala. We just leaned into what it had to offer, and it definitely affected everyone.
And
You know,
you were so creative within that. That end shot where the camera just goes back through the rooms, and that was created out of the design of the
The
space.
design of the
You
house, yeah, it
looked at it,
was.
you just ran with it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So a lot of it came from, what can we do? Oh, open these doors or open the windows, and, pull back a little bit. So uh, just allowing for the tactile nature of the actual what we were living in, to speak to the filmmaking was amazing. And quite a lot of, I mean, I storyboarded and I animatic, but one of the first things we did most mornings, I think every morning, was just open the playing field to the actors, and allowing their sense of ease within the space dictate what the camera should do, as opposed to the opposite. So quite often myself and Narian would just see what was happening organically with the actors, and then a lot of uh, the creative inspiration came from that.
that's so awesome to hear, because you know a lot of times these films, especially like independent films, they have these in amazing moments, like that end moment that you mentioned, Alice. They kind of come out of nowhere, just based off necessity or based on what you have to work with. So I love that not only did you utilize that type of mentality with the cast, but also with the space. That's so like next level. Very, very cool filmmaking. I want to jump a little bit into the story. You know, this is a story about queer repression, generational trauma, but it's also very funny. It doesn't shy away from the humor, which I also enjoyed. How did you both navigate those tonal shifts between horror? You know, Glenn, you mentioned melodrama, the dark comedy, while also keeping the performances very grounded because it at times it feels like you're watching this dark comedy, but then maybe in the next scene it feels like you're watching a soap opera. So it was such a wild and fun ride. I had such a fun time attempting to explain this film to colleagues and peers.
Well, I'll jump in. I just remain completely convinced and enamored by my characters and grounded in their relationship. And truthfully, it's a personal piece as well. So I felt like when I was having fun or poking a bit of fun at the situations, it came from a good place. It wasn't to be laughed at, but to be laughed with.
Yeah, yeah.
So I just remained convinced that I could be the safety net for my actors because it was perhaps again we're in a fine line of not wanting to go too broad, wanting to keep it grounded, but to also have a bit of fun. And from a very young age, what I always got from horror was escapism, and I loved when horror had a little bit of humor to it as well. So that was sort of the wheelhouse that I was in, and I felt very confident and comfortable inviting folks in on that.
And Alice, do you have any commentary about kind of working with those tonal shifts from horror, melodrama, dark comedy?
Well, I was relying very heavily on Glenn to be my sounding board because I actually was daunted by the prospect of handling those shifts. But I think all you can do in trying to do so is to become so immersed in the reality of the character. And it's the absurdity that produces the shifts.
Yes.
I mean, the but for her, it's not absurd. It's an undeniable truth. It simply is what is. But to the outside eye, it's so absurd. But you need to live inside that truth. And then, of course, it was there in the writing. So you take the gift of the writing and you try to live inside of the truth of the character. And you are helped by so many factors in that, by Glenn, by by the fantastic and unexpected journey we went with the costumes. They got more and more outlandish. The more we went into dressing her, the more daring and outrageous we became in the way, I mean, there's that scene where she shows up in the middle of the night in a lame frock and a fur and a cocktail. So where exactly has Jacqueline been? You know, she hasn't left the house. What has she been doing? So stuff like the costumes, and we pushed the boundary as far as we could. She rocks up in a pillbox and gloves. I mean, so the absurdity of all of it, and if you just sort of lived inside that absurdity, I think it helped generate the tone.
Yeah,
And
I
the fact that she loves her son.
Yeah.
She is beside herself with fury at him, but when push comes to shove, she she would give her life for him, actually, even though she contemplates taking his. Um, And that if you just cling on to those contradictions, I think it gives you the tonal shift.
I think we're also sort of with the comedy. I felt very reassured with the idea of going just deadpan. Like this is just water off a duck's back. This is the scene you mentioned where Jacqueline is perhaps contemplating doing her son in. We had quite a bit of conversation about it. Would she really do this? I'm like, well, just we'll see. Let's have fun.
And I must say, I do bless and thank Glenn for even entertaining the idea that I could do it because no one has ever thought I could be funny. And the fact that Glenn realized that there might be a glimmer of that as a possibility was a great compliment and very reassuring.
To piggyback off of that, Alice, what I will say is that every time you were on screen, I had to look at your outfit, and then each time you would re-enter, I would have to check out your outfit, make sure it was one of the things that it was almost like a drinking game. I was so excited to see what you would be wearing next. So it was so much fun. The whole film. I mean, I love those little pieces that like there's so much thought and effort and love that's put into this film, all around cast, crew, everyone in between, and it's kind of a reflection of the film itself because at its core the film is about family legacy and about those expectations, those suffocating expectations, because like I know that to make any film is difficult, but to make a film like this that has this commentary, but also delivering it in a way that's digestible, that's not easily done. And so not only is this film fun, but it makes it's not shoehorned in. Like it's a fantastic film. I think a lot of people need to see it. How did you guys, you know, push those themes and push those ideas authentically without overshadowing the gothic thrills? Because it's, to me, a lot of times when I'm watching a film, and I watch plenty, I always get so annoyed when they shoehorn in the themes. And to me, everything just worked so perfectly that it just seemed like this was everyone was cast to play their role. The writing is on point. I just can't thank you guys enough for putting in the work and the effort into this.
Oh God, thank you so much. That's
Right,
great to hear.
right.
I think it just comes from a very personal place, as a queer artist, as a queer kid growing up in Dublin in the 80s and I felt the weight of heteronormative expectations, and I think Grayson Manor represents that, and also horror genre, melodrama. I mean, I've said it before, but it saved my life. It was truly escapism of watching queer. I didn't know it at the time. I thought I was starved of queer content when I was younger. I really wasn't. I was watching James Whale. I was watching soap operas like Dallas and Dynasty and Falcon Crest. I was watching, and then more contemporary at the time, folks like Clive Barker and so on. So, all of my love for that kind of work and that kind of escapism just sort of flowed out of me from the get-go on this project. But a very, very personal piece of joke that pretty much everyone in the mansion is represents one of my quirks, let's say. Yeah, and I know it never felt like a tricky balance once we were all on set. To get back to the costumes, for instance, I mean, we just had such a great laugh. Every time I turned around and Alice was there in a new gown in this an amazing room or whatever, I would just burst into laughter. It was just joyous. So
Alice, any final thoughts as far as the theme
Just
and legacy?
I think it's a kind of get me tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's a kind of recent development in horror that there are these subgenres that are at least as much about psychological horror, about the horror of what human beings do to each other. Do you know what I mean? An internal horror
Yes.
rather than external stuff. Um, and it gives it a weight that kind of stays with you. I mean, looked at from one point of view, Grayson Manor is a sort of moral tale, isn't it?
Yeah.
So there's an underlying seriousness without ever it being mentioned to the content that you'll think about, I suspect, sometime later. You know, that there's what happens inside families kind of defines how we are in the world. Um, but this is such a wonderful take on it. Do you know what I mean? It does everything families do: melodrama, tenderness, rage, love, all of it. It's all kind of wrapped up. And I think it's well, I'm so glad that it struck a chord with you because it always felt very dangerous to me. I mean, every day felt dangerous in terms of whether or not we would actually strike the right note or whether I would. Um, but there's something very truthful at the core of it.
Yeah, I couldn't say it better myself. And that's exactly why it resonated with me. Thank you guys so much for your time. I think that that's the best way to cap it off, honestly, because it definitely will strike a chord with audiences all over the world. The restoration at Grayson Manor. Here at CineDump, we let the doers know how they're doing. Alice, Glenn, you guys are doing just fine. Thank you so much for
Oh,
your time.
gosh.
Great. Thank
Jessie, thank you
you.
so much.
Take care.
Adios,
Bye.
guys.